Okay, we will go to number 11, Finance Committee reports. Committee Chair Moss, are you presenting today? Are you presenting the motions?
I am, thank you.
Thank you.
So the first two items are related. Action item 11.2 is distribution of funds from the trust distribution account. And the committee moves that the board approves R277-477 draft 1 on second and final reading.
So the motion before the board is that the board approves R277-477 distributions of funds from the trust distribution account and administration of the school land trust program draft 1 on second and final reading. Seeing no discussion, please vote. I believe that's unanimous.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Chair.
Second item, thank you, 11.3 on school community councils. And the recommended action here is that the committee moves that the board approves R277-491, draft 1 on second and final reading. And I can offer a brief explanation on these two, if that's okay.
Yeah, you should probably do that before you do your motion, however, but go ahead.
Last time I was told to make the motion first and stop.
Okay, then you just do it. However, Chair Huntsman tells you to do it is the right way.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so these two rule changes had two basic slight tweaks. One is to move back the date for website postings from October 1st to October 20th to give time for elections, discussion, etc. The second was to replace the requirement of an annual report to the audit committee to an annual written report to the finance committee. Those both came out of the Trust Lands Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that. Okay, so the motion before the board is the board approve R277-491 School Community Council Draft 1 on second and final reading. Seeing no discussion, please vote. I see that as unanimous. Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Moss.
All right, 11.4 is a amendment and continuation on rule R277-122. And sorry, let me get back to the motion. Motion is that the board continue and approve R277-122 draft 1 on second and final reading. And if I could on this one, the staff has reviewed the rule and recommended amendments to take into account recent changes to state procurement rules and update procurement thresholds. So there are a couple of changes lifting those requirement rules. We've lost, I think, Zach, and so I think Ben is available if anybody has questions on that one.
I have a clarifying question, Chair Moss. So when you're saying they were updated, this was updated in the meeting, not since the meeting. In the finance meeting? Yes.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Not since what was done in finance.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so the motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board continues and approves R277-122 Board of Education Procurement Draft 1 on second and final reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please vote. I mean, all vote. Everyone vote. I see that as unanimous. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, next item, 11.5. Sorry. Here we go. Motion for the board is the committee moves that the board continues R277-485 loss of enrollment on second and final reading. That does not have any amendment, just continuation.
Okay, so the motion is that from the committee is that the board continues R277-485 loss of enrollment on the second and final reading. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, I think I'm going to have to read these out because we're online. I think that's the new law. Okay, so voting yes is Board Member Booth, Board Member Cannon, Board Member Vice Chair Davis, Board Member Earl, Board Member Hanson, Board Member Hart, Board Member Huntsman, Board Member Hutchings, Board Member Hymas, Board Member Lear, Board Member Moss, Board Member Norton, and Board Member Straight. Voting no was Board Member Klein. Did I get that accurately?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Number 11.6. This is a big one. We reviewed the budget for all the departments, divisions, sections, etc., and received in-depth briefing from Assistant Superintendent Jacobson, Deputy Superintendent Jones, who I think either or both are here. Motion for the board is the committee moves that the board approve the proposed state fiscal year 2023 budgets.
Okay, so the motion from the committee is that the board approves the proposed state fiscal year 2023 budget. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing Board Member Klein?
I noticed it says 700,000 for after-school program. Is that the Utah After School Network that money's going to?
Vice Chair, could I defer that to staff, either to Deputy Superintendent Jones or Assistant Superintendent Jacobson?
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, Scott.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you recognize Assistant Superintendent Jacobson? We can pull that up real quick.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Deborah, do you have that $700,000?
Can you tell me which line you see that in?
Board Member Klein, please.
I don't remember what line it was on. I just remember seeing it in there. It just says after school program.
Right, it's in there, but I think what you're asking is whether or not the $700,000 is in support of any contract with that entity. Is that what you're asking, ma'am?
Correct. Is that money going to Utah After School Network for their program?
The RFPs for funding for the next year we have not entered into any new procurements yet. New year procurements will not, we won't start going through those processes until about mid-May. So,
and then each of those will come before us individually to be
all contracts,
Yeah.
all contracts over 100,000 will come to you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Klein. Vice Chair Davis?
Yeah, I just, is there someone here that can clarify just about that question? Is UAN a program? Does it have a program? Does it work with kids after school? That's a programmatic question, and maybe it should come somewhere different in the agenda. I don't know.
I think it's appropriate.
Can we defer on that one as well? I'm not sure who the
Yeah, to somebody.
I'll defer to Scott and whoever he defers to.
Okay, it looks like a board vice deputy, like Superintendent Dixon has her hand up. Sorry, Sid.
That's fine. I mean, I'm certainly not the expert on it. We have staff who are, but they are an organization, they're an association who supports after school programs. So they're a network. They provide, I don't know, a variety of types of support. So for example, Boys and Girls Club might belong to the Utah After School Network, but it's the Boys and Girls Club who would provide the actual after school programming to the kids in their program. So it's more of an association or an organization rather than offering direct services, to my knowledge.
Vice Chair Davis, follow up?
Yeah, no, thank you. That helps because I think there's confusion in the land about it.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Klein?
I do know that they provide training to some extent. However, how much they do, I don't know, but they do provide training for groups that do give direct services to the kids in the after school programs.
Board Member Klein, may I do a follow-up? I'm trying to get clarity as well. Training to whom?
To anybody, I assume anybody that gives direct services to the kids in the after-school programs.
I'm just wondering if there's somebody who works in the after-school programs who can give us clear guidance on that as well. See, I'm just going to hold and see if you can't get staff, and I'm going to go on to Board Member Hymas.
Yeah, I guess to kind of go along with Board Member Klein's, just simply a yes or no, do we give the UAN money? Staff, can you answer that?
I think we're trying to find that information, and if they were part of the procurement process. So I guess we're looking at for two things. Do we give them money, and really who do they train, and just a little more clarity on this one. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is that okay, Board Member Hymas? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Chair Huntsman?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of order here. This is not about programs. This is a compliance part of what we do as a State Board of Education. And this is the budgeting part of it. The contracts and everything that's behind this still comes before the board, but this is, again, just for clarity reason, that this is to propose, that the proposal before the board, that the board approves the state fiscal year 2023 budget. It's a budget. It's not everything that's behind it yet, but this is for transparency. And if I'm wrong in my perception before I vote, can I direct this question for clarity to Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones?
I think you can, Chair. I think this is actually about the $700,000 for after-school programs that somebody's trying to figure out where that money's going to vote up or down on this. That would be my perception. Deputy Superintendent Jones?
So, Madam Chair, Chair Huntsman is correct. What we're seeking is in compliance to the Budgetary Procedures Act, and you as the board and the public, approving or the 2023 budget. However, it is pertinent or relevant for a board member to look at the particular line items within the proposed budget you're reviewing and looking at. So it is relevant, the question that came up about the $700,000 or any other part or piece of the budget as part of this process that ultimately is, or we're seeking to meet the compliance piece to the Budgetary Procedures Act. I hope that helps answer the question.
Thank you. I think they're actually both probably accurate. I believe that we have someone on who can answer this. Dr. Dixon, who is that coming in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have Camille Sheik, if we can get her elevated. Jerry, I don't know if you're able to do that. And Camille works with our after school and out of school programs.
Is she in yet? I'm going to go ahead and go to Board Member Earl's question, and then maybe, because they'll all glom together, maybe.
She's not in yet.
Okay.
I think Scott Jones kind of answered this, but I think this is part of, we just don't approve a budget to approve a budget, right? Just to say that part of the transparency is actually vetting on the items that are within here and asking questions where we have questions. But we could move all but forward except for the item that is in question. Is that accurate? If we had or does it have to be done in whole?
We can do that, Board Member Earl. I think part of the conundrum where Chair Huntsman is that moving forward, there is no approval of any program at this time. We're approving the budget for RFPs to go out and so that it can move forward. We're not approving a program. So I can see where
yeah, and I do understand that, but I guess just the transparency of knowing where the programs have previously been funded, right? And also that the money is set aside for a specific entity traditionally used. So that's where the question comes in.
So are you making a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we approve the budget except for the $700,000 at this point until we have further information. And I guess 700,000, I don't know, I guess it'd have to spell out, I don't know what it says on that
After
line.
school programs. is what
After school programs.
It's on there. Do I have a second to that?
I'll second.
Board Member Hymas. Oh, well, hello. You got off your phone finally. Maybe your internet's back up.
It is. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So the motion before the board is that the committee moves that the board, oh, somebody moved it. That the board approves the proposed state fiscal year 2023 budget with the exception of the budget item that includes after school funding at $700,000. Okay, so we have a lot of questions and or comments here. Questions would be very helpful. Okay, Vice Chair Davis. Should we, Vice Chair, would you care if we got some answers to the other questions first? Because Camille is here.
Can I add one quick question to it?
You bet.
When I was researching this to try to figure out the true story with UAN and Planned Parenthood and all that discussion online, I thought we were only talking about the after-school tutoring we were doing through the CARES Act funding and the ESSER funds, et cetera. But actually, I think I read something where the legislature appropriated some money, and I think it was $700,000, but I don't know if I'm remembering correctly. So is this $700,000 appropriated by the legislature that we have to put into action for after-school programs? Or is this a different $700,000 that's completely up to our discretion? Or is this through the ESSER groups that we voted on, where we knew explicitly who the groups were that were providing the after-school tutoring, regardless of who was in the after-school network? We knew which ones were providing when we voted on the ESSER funds.
Okay, Camille, are you here and have you heard this conversation?
No, I'm just jumping in late. I apologize. I was just on a quick call with one of our rural programs that lost their executive director, and we're trying to get reimbursements made. I'm so sorry. Camille Sheik,
Okay.
Specialist.
Thank you, Camille. So you've heard one question, but the other one is that do we provide money to the Utah, what is it? Somebody help me with the name.
Utah After School Network?
Yes, do we provide money, and how was that procured? And
Of course.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I am not sure of this particular $700,000 for after. This is the first time I'm hearing this amount, so can definitely research that and get back to you as soon as possible. But through some federal funding, we do support the Utah After School Network to provide quality improvement efforts to our funded after school program. So them working with kind of a mentor or coach to really connect with the school day. So they're bringing, what's going on in the school day to the after school space, getting teachers involved. And that's through our federal 21st Century Grant. So it's not state funds. So I'm not sure what these funds are in particular.
Okay, you might get some more questions, especially if we didn't get those answered. So Vice Chair Davis, did your question get answered?
You're muted.
Okay, I'm just going to keep listening to people. What I thought I heard her say was that the after-school tutoring was coming from a federal grant, but this $700,000 might be from a different source, but not state funds.
No, 700 is state.
This 700 is state, and was it allocated by the legislature
I am
for this purpose?
May I respond?
Yes.
I am not sure. I hadn't been aware of the $700,000, so I can only speak to the federal funds that we use to support after school programs across the state. So I don't know.
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent Jones, do you have a response to that?
Yes. So, or actually, Madam Chair, I have something that I'll say that might help clarify this a little bit further.
Go ahead.
What the action that we're asking you to take is for the budget for FY 2023. So the budget for FY 2023 is for the legislature appropriated federal money for after school programs, right? It's $1,933,000, which is what Camille is saying, right, for that. There is this existing amount that I believe Board Member Klein is talking about, which to me is not what we're seeking here, which I think goes back to Chair Huntsman's point. What we're seeking is for approval of the budget, but any contract for anything with any type of vendor would be vetted by you at a later date for money that was approved by you for your budget for fiscal year 2023. I think what Board Member Klein is, and I'd ask her to clarify this, is referring to is the existing contract and the amount of money that was already approved previously. So what you're doing is the process we're asking you to do is to approve your budget for next year, right? If there's already a contract in place or already funding, and the whole $700,000 does not go to UAN, I'm sure that, but I don't have it in front of me how to break it down. So I believe Board Member Klein is referring to something that already exists, something that's already being paid out of your budget. What we're asking you to do is to approve your budget for after-school programs. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're approving a particular vendor. That comes later. That comes later when we actually enter into the process of RFPs or seeking vendors to provide those programs. That concludes my input, which I hope is helpful, not confusing. So.
Okay, Scott, that's actually very helpful and clarified my brain that what is the motion on the table is to remove this. However, we're just approving a proposed budget, not any vendor or anything else in there. Is that accurate, Scott?
Yes, ma'am. Subject to Board Member Klein's clarity on where she's getting the $700,000. We really need to know where she's coming up with that amount. Is it in a particular line in the proposed budget? Or is it the existing amount of money that's already been committed or obligated for contracts for after-school programs? If she could help clarify that, I think that would help you all know what we're seeking here as far as the proposed budget for FY 2023. We are not seeking approval of using any 2023 money at this point. Well, not any, but for these purposes, for a particular vendor.
Okay.
Chair, may I?
Board Member Klein, can you answer that question?
Yeah, so the 700,000 was one of the line items in the budget. That's where that amount came from. My question is, are the contracts that we will approve for after school programs, do they fall under the Utah After School Network? Are those programs and those groups required to receive training from the Utah After School Network?
Okay, so
can these groups, these other programs exist without the Utah After School Network in our state?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to some clarifying information from Chair Huntsman that was helpful, is that we really need to stay on the budget piece right now. And I was thinking it vacillates because whether it's 700,000 or after school programs, we're not doing anything programmatic today.
Right.
We're just saying this is the money that is set aside for after school programs. So and then Board Member Klein, I think it would be appropriate at some point for us to find the answer about the programmatic piece.
Yeah, I was just trying to give some clarity as to why I was asking, because if all the programs that we end up approving later on end up having to fall under Utah After School Network, that makes a difference in whether this should, in my opinion, be approved or not.
Okay, I appreciate that question, that comment, and if somebody could gather that, does it have to? Board Member Hanson?
I'm not sure where we are now without knowing exactly where that 700,000 is for, but my understanding is that we're approving a budget and that any contract would come before us, and then we could voice any concerns about the vendor that we were contracting with, and veto or not vote down any contract that was with the vendor we didn't think was appropriate. ongoing funds have already been approved. So if we have an idea where that specific line item is, so we can see that, it would be very helpful in this budget. But otherwise, I'd like to amend the motion so that we and move that we vote to approve the budget with the understanding that any specific contracts associated with the after-school programs of whatever value will come back to the board and be flagged to our attention.
Okay, so you want to remove from the amended motion on the floor right now to be that the board approves the proposed state fiscal year 2022 budgets and have all after-school programs brought back for an up or down vote by the board.
Any contracts having to do with after-school programs, yes, come back to the board for review and approval.
I'll second.
I can't really tell what exactly we're taking out or adding.
We're taking out the 700,000. That was removed. I just think we need to move the budget forward so that we can function, and then we can, as a review measure, so that we can do our research and due diligence. We can have any contracts that go out having to do with this area of concern that's been identified, after school programs. We can have those come back to the board and we can look at those. And we'll have some time to put together the information we need. We can speak more intelligently about what we're doing on those after school programs.
And I'll second that, Vice Chair.
Okay, so in this case, we're not saying anything about $700,000. We're just saying, and requests for contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review. Is this accurate? What's on the board there? Okay, we have a motion to amend. So we need to make the amendment first, and the amendment is to remove the 700,000 and to put back in request contracts related to after-school programs be brought back to the board for review. So we're taking out the removal of the $700,000 language and bringing back what I know it's kind of hard because the screen keeps flipping. Okay. Does anyone need clarification as to what the amendment is on the table?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Chair?
Yeah, I'd like to see it on a screen if we can get staff to bring it up to show. I'm doing some research on the site. I'm trying to find that exact $700,000 that's listed and how
we can't find it. Nobody's finding it, Chair. That's why if the 700 is out, then it makes a little more clarity here.
Madam Chair, this is Scott.
Yes. Yes.
So we can, it's in the backup, so we can bring it up and we can show you where the proposed budget for FY23, because Student Support Services does not have any budget for after school programs except for the federal grant. And that federal grant is more than $700,000. So, and I cannot see, but we'll follow back up with Board Member Klein to make sure that her concern is addressed on that particular $700,000. So here you go.
I don't think we need to pull this whole thing up because it's not there. $700,000 is listed nowhere on here.
Well, all I'm saying is without knowing for sure what line item Board Member Klein is referencing, you know, she says she saw it, and I believe her that she saw $700,000. But for the Utah After School Network, right, particularly, there's no budget for the Utah After School Network. The only budget is for after school programs that we're proposing to you within the Student Support Services federal programs line item. And then Deborah, which number is it? Can we call out the number for it?
And that's where my concern is.
Right.
Motion is, this is about numbers and budgets, not programs. And now we're making it an exception to that, minimizing our budget. Moving forward which is all about programs. So I'm very confused about our proposed action.
Right, it's numbers 1, 2, and 3. I respectfully request that all board members look at line items number 1, 2, and 3 within the Student Support Services federal programs.
I did have that marked down as the after school, the 21st century one. So I'm not sure where the 700,000 came from, or I wrote down, but the 21st century one, those line items, I think I definitely saw those too, and that's what caught my eye. If there's 700,000 somewhere else, I don't know. I had written it down.
I think that's the amount that you saw on a either a contract or a contract amendment. So I'll follow back up with you, ma'am. Your question is relevant. It's pertinent. We want to make sure that you're seeing, you and the public and all the other board members are seeing what we're proposing to you. And so I'll follow back up with you. But again, with items 1, 2, and 3, all we're seeking today is your approval of the proposed FY 2023 budget, which would include this federal money for after-school programs. Specific vendors or use of these funds comes later as part of the process of either RFPs or updates by way of the monthly budget report to all board members and the public. Madam Chair, that concludes my input to this. I think Assistant Superintendent Jacobson might have some additional input too.
Thank you. Will you go back to the amendment, the amended motion on the table? So what we have on the table is to remove the language with the exception of the budget item that includes $700,000, which of after-school programs, which we don't even know where it is, and replace the language with and request contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review. Is anyone speaking to this motion to take that one out and to add that line? Vice Chair Davis?
I am speaking to it, but I believe he said that he wanted programs of any value to come back, not just those over a certain amount of money, but any after-school programs that are going to be working with our students. He wanted to.
I think that's what it says when what's being added.
There's no limitation there. It just says all contracts related to after-school programs would come back.
Okay, I'd like to speak to this motion. I think, it makes sense moving forward, particularly since we don't, we can approve what's going to be used for these monies. But at some point, I do think we do need to know, and I'm going to reiterate these two questions that Board Member Klein asked, and I realize that this might come at another time, but there are 300 plus organizations that are part of this network of all the organizations that work under UAN. So the question is, if one of those is not good or we don't want that working with students, does that mean we should never use any of the other 299? And I think that's really where we're going to have to figure out as a board. And the other important question is, are all these organizations, what she asked, are all these other organizations required to have training by this sort of coordinator umbrella organization that helps people know what all the programs are out there that can do after school service for kids? These are, I think, at the crux of the concern. And at some point, I think we need those answers. My understanding is that training is not required to be part of this network. And my other understanding is that UAN doesn't hire these programs, but they help people to know all these programs that exist. I may need more clarification myself to know to what extent exactly how those connections work. But I think it's important to remember that there are more than 300 programs that are in this network of all these programs that help kids after school. So we need to be thoughtful and careful about where we are putting our funds moving forward and in who will be working with our students and our teachers. Thanks.
Okay, I just would like to reiterate, anything programmatic is not speaking to this amendment. So I'd like, if you're speaking to this amendment, to take out the first part and add the ending part. If you're speaking to that. Board Member Earl.
Yes, I appreciate Scott Hansen's motion. I think this is appropriate that we can get correct information on this as we move forward. So I am speaking for this.
Thank you, Board Member Earl. Is there anyone else? Deborah, Scott, and Dr. Dixon, you have your hands up. Are you speaking?
Yeah, we found the $700,000. Board
Well,
member
there we
Klein-
go.
Yeah, board member Klein is referring to the CNP budget for $700,000 for after-school programs, which is meal programs. If that's the amount, it's in the. Can
Oh,
we-
so maybe the numbers got transposed with after-school
Oh.
programs versus meal
Well,
programs.
it's the same verbiage. So you see in student services, it says after-school programs. If you go to the CNP proposed budget, which I'm not sure where that is. Yeah, you got to pull the CNP one up.
I do have CNP written down. I didn't know what that meant on my
Yeah,
notes.
that's the child nutrition program. And that's what you're referring to. It's line item number 2. It says after school program. That's a meal program. And that's where the $700,000 is.
Well, that's good to note. Thank
Yeah.
you, Scott.
No, that's great. You know what? I sincerely appreciate board member Klein going line by line and looking through this. This is exactly the dialogue we need for the transparency and to be forward facing. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Dixon, do you have something on this amendment?
I do 2 things. One, I just need to correct something that Vice Chair Davis indicated. She used the words, and maybe Vice Chair Davis, it was not your intent to use this word, but you said provide oversight. And the Utah After School Network does not provide oversight. They're not in charge of any after school program. My second thing is going back to the motion about talking about programs. I just, in terms of this amendment, I think you don't need an amendment for this, but you could just request that the Utah After School Network discussion happen in one of the committees in the June meeting so that we can clear up any information. I think Camille has a list of things she could probably talk about. It would just make the motion, the amendment cleaner, I think, if you could pop that out.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can I have the amendment back up on the screen, please? Anyone else speaking to this amendment? Okay, so the amendment is to remove, with the exception of the budget item that includes $700,000 for after-school programs, and replace the language with, and request contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review. Any discussion to this motion? This amendment? Seeing none, please vote. Oh, wait, Brent, you just have to.
I'm so sorry. Member Moss has his hand raised.
Well, I actually knew they both had their hand raised. I just didn't know if it was to this amendment. That's what I'm asking. Board Member Straight.
Well, so I don't think the $700,000 applies anymore. I think
It doesn't.
So.
But it was already an amendment on the table.
Oh.
So we have to re-amend it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I don't mind doing that, but in the final analysis, my experience is that this amount of money, you're going to have to go out to bid. Lowest qualified bidder, qualified. Can we legally disqualify a bidder? And I guess that isn't even necessarily the question. If you go back to Board Member Davis, it seems like it's even more complex than that. So I'm just concerned about the whole direction. We passed the same thing on Tuesday night. And nothing is set in stone, nothing. We plugged in numbers for COLA, we plugged in numbers for all sorts of different things that are all preliminary. It's the beginning budget process. It's the beginning of the budget process, which you have to do every year in order. So I'm not in favor of the motion or the, because we're going to have more shots at this. And I really have the question, I'd like someone to answer the question is, can we disqualify a bidder based on a political agenda?
Okay, so I think that we probably put that over here, Brent, and not take it off, but just remember that we want that answered at some point. Board Member Moss?
I just wanted to speak in favor of the amendment. I think it clarifies, it removes the $700,000 exception and approves the complete budget, which gives the money to go forward, and the programmatic element will be down the road. We could bring it to a committee in June for discussion of the after-school network. Any contract that's approved after the bid process would come back under this amendment. So we'll have that quality review. So I think this handles the budget that the Finance Committee is hoping to approve and move that forward and then revisit the other stuff. At least as I understand the effect of the proposed amendment from Board Member Hanson. So I'm in favor.
Okay, I just have, Board Member Lear.
I'm not sure if I somehow missed this in the discussion, but I thought we said that 700,000 is no longer applicable because it belongs to CMP. So why are we?
We're getting rid of it. That's the part we're taking out because the amendment was on the table. How about this? Without objection, does anyone have any problem with me taking out the First Amendment by Board Member Earl? Does anyone have an objection? If you have an objection, please raise your hand. Carol, do you have an objection to me taking out the First Amendment?
No, I don't.
Okay, so without objection, we're going to take out that first one. So the amendment to the original motion is to add at the end of it that the board approves the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget and requests contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review.
Non-CMP, can we add non-CMP school programs so as not to be confused with the?
I don't think it needs to be.
Okay.
Because it would.
I'll understand that we're not going to mess with the CMP programs. This is just the other group of programs. Is that okay?
Unless you want that in there, Board Member Lear, if you want to make an amendment.
I don't want to tie up the CMP programs. That's all. I want them to get food to kids.
So are you making a motion?
I am saying if there's a common understanding, I'm fine with this the way it's written.
Okay. Board Member Straight? Don't put that in there because that wasn't put in. Thank you. Okay. So
we need a second. I'll second.
I think it was already seconded because I think it was you who did it. However, I just wanted to make one comment on this, and I am not voting for this because all contracts already have to come back to the board. They have to be discussed. We get to review, we get to re-review, and I don't see any reason for it to come back. So I'm going to be voting no to this amendment because I think that's already in our rules and policies. I mean, our bylaws. I mean, in our rules. Thank you. So the motion before the board is, will you pull that down a little bit? Oh, I guess we have to do the amendment first, is to amend the motion to add and request contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review. Seeing no more discussion, all in favor of, please vote about adding this amendment. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick roll call vote. Board Member Booth?
No.
Board Member Cannon?
Yes.
Board Member Klein?
Yes.
Board Member Davis?
Yes.
Board Member Earl?
Oh, yes.
Board Member Hanson?
Yes.
Board Member Hart?
Yes.
Board Member Chair Huntsman?
No.
Board Member Hutchings?
No.
Board Member Hymas?
Yes.
Board Member Lear? Board Member Lear?
No.
Board Member Moss?
Yes.
Board Member Norton?
No.
Board Member Straight?
No.
Sybil, does that pass?
No.
There's 8.
Yep,
Yes.
okay, that passes. Okay, so the motion before the board is that the board approves the proposed state fiscal year, that amendment passes, sorry. The motion before the board is the board approves the proposed state fiscal year 2023 budgets and request contracts related to after-school programs come back to the board for review as amended. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, please vote. I see that as unanimous. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Phew. Chair Moss.
Thank you. All right, next up, item number 11 point. Let's see, I'm already ahead of, let's see.
11.7.
11.7, thank you. I was already in the document. So I'll make the motion first and then brief bit of background. The committee recommends that the board direct financial operations staff to follow the policies and procedures of state finance to effectively write off the remaining balance owed by Utah Mountain School, which failed to open. The background here is this school was approved. It went through various attempts to open, was not able to do so. And so the committee, with support of those involved with the revolving loan fund, have made the recommendation that the remaining balance of $109,000 be written off. The question presented was whether that money should come instead from the new charter school closure fund, and the committee and staff and those involved in the revolving loan fund determined that that fund did not apply here because its intent was to help with the closure costs of a school that actually opened where this one did not. So I know Deputy Superintendent Jones can provide more explanation, but that is the motion.
Thank you. Board Member Norton.
Yes, I still have questions about House Bill 425 and that fund that was created, because it seems like this is the perfect reasoning to have it. And I don't, as I read through that bill again, it doesn't say what constitutes open. It doesn't say anything about you have children attending, because this is a charter that received a charter authorization, and it then was able to use that charter authorization to go ahead and get a loan from the charter board. And that to me seems like they're open for business. So that's my question. You know, who determines what open is? You know, if you can get money, it sounds like you're a living, breathing entity. And if that's not the case, then maybe we need to talk to staff about going back to the legislature and having something in there that will protect us.
Thank you, Board Member Norton. Board Member Earl.
My question is the charter school authorizer, which I'm thinking is the state charter board. I didn't see their recommendations in here. I saw something from their fiscal person, but what was their analysis on this? And maybe I just missed that.
I think that would go to Deputy Superintendent Jones, or Chair Moss. Do you have that?
If I could defer, I didn't see a vote on that. My understanding was that the charter board had recommended this, but I don't know that I saw a vote by the full board. Good question.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Stewart's here. He's staff for the SCSB. He can speak to what the SCSB recommended or did.
That would be great. Stewart.
Hi, Stuart Acobia, Financial Compliance Manager for the State Charter School Board. So this did not go to the State Charter School Board. They do recommend they have approved our closing manual. So we're following those procedures. But this did not go before them for a vote. And in the past, with the 3 other schools they've written off, it didn't go before them either.
Okay, I guess I'm just looking at the law itself, which is what 53F 9307, and just for closure reserve count, and it says that we'll work in partnership with the authorizer. And I guess the partnership doesn't have to be a vote. Is that maybe accurate? I guess it could be working with. I just wanted to know where they stood and what their direction was. So
It sounds like that the statute you quoted involves the closure account, the closure reserve accounts, but we're not recommending the funds come from there at all. The revolving loan is a self-funded program, and it's well-funded to be able to absorb this. And that's the procedures we've
Oh,
followed in the
okay.
past.
That was a misunderstanding I had then. I thought it was coming through that, but you're saying it's coming through a different account, revolving loan account. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Board Member Earl. Deputy Jones, do you have something else or just your hands up?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And I apologize. I've been trying to turn my camera on. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So, I mean, this is new territory in the sense that, you know, the legislature did, you know, pass or provide that funding. What we're saying as staff is that we can go back to the legislature on this. To Stuart's point, the past process has been just the write-off of the loan. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that when we do that, that just basically means there's less money in the account or in the charter school revolving loan account, right? If the board wants to make a motion, I don't, you know, and Angie can jump in on this too if she wants from a policy perspective, but because it's new territory, if the board wants to vote to use that money to cover that particular loan, we would put that money in, you know, the closure funds, right, that were provided by the legislature. We would put that money back into the loan account. And we can do that subject to us working with the legislature to ensure clarity on, you know, this particular circumstance. I don't think anyone anticipated, you know, to be direct on, you know, when a situation occurs like this one where a school didn't open or didn't have students start, right? I mean, was it open? Yes. I mean, did students start? No. So I think I think there's a lot of understanding out there either way. If you want to have staff pursue, you know, with the legislature in the next session, that clarity. I hope that helps.
It does. Board Member Earl, did you have a follow-up?
My only follow-up is, as I'm thinking about this particular charter, they tried to open during the pandemic. So there's some, right? I mean, there's some unique situations even around this charter trying to get it off the ground in a pandemic. So I guess I'm just trying to get the full scope of what we're looking at here. In the last 2 years would have been, you know, especially for an outside organization, there just seems to be some more significant challenges than normal that would associate with this particular charter.
Thank you. Chair Moss, did you have something or just your hand is raised?
No, yeah, I do. Just a recommendation. I mean, I understand the approval of staff and charter board staff, having been there. I know they're deep in the weeds on this. I would suggest that we should take a look at revisiting the interplay here, especially, you know, as it's been presented, the priority of paying off the debts is an important question when a school closes or fails to open. And what's being followed in terms of determining priority is the charter school closure manual. And so the reference to closure, of course, kind of gets you into the territory of the closure fund. I'm in support of taking recommendations that came through finance here, but I think some real questions have been raised that need to be answered before the next time comes around. If it's not a closure, then what happens is should the loan be repaid before secured creditors, and should secured creditors be on notice that they're subject to that priority? Those are tough questions I don't have answers to, but it seems like we got some loose ends here that need to be cleared up.
Thank you. Board Member Norton?
Yep, that was my second follow-up question, was the priority of payments. So I'm taking my hand down.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Vice Chair Davis?
I agree that we need to look, you know, procedurally for the future and tie up some of those loose ends, but just practically for this situation, once the debts are paid off, and I thought there weren't a lot of debts in this particular case, but maybe I understood that wrong. Where is the greater need in the charter system? Is the greater need for the debt to be written off in the revolving loan account for new people who need the revolving loan account, or is the greater need to keep that money in the closure account? Are they equally balanced? Does it make no difference whether we just write it off here, or would it be helpful for the system in general to take it from the closure account and put it into the revolving loan account? That's what I don't have clarity on to decide this.
Okay. I'm just going to go to Chair Huntsman.
Yes, if I might, I'm in favor of the recommendations from the Finance Committee. The original, as many of you know, we're not, and I've said this in our finance, we didn't know we were in the banking business. And in the banking business, this loan was originally taken from the revolving loan account, and that revolving loan account is built and sustains itself and grows to take care of these debts. So the simplest expectation, the way that I see it, is that it comes from the revolving loan account, because that's how it was originally designed. Now we have this new account, and we can certainly explore and ask in our legislative AFAs next session to modify that, the new account. But this is about closing books and shutting things down and closing the school and zeroing out balances. And I'm very much supportive of, we hold the course in our revolving loan account and have it written up. I think in my timeline, I think this is number 4, and the sustainability of the account, it's still healthy and growing, so it's meeting the purpose of what's happening with that account and in this world that we live in as now being bankers besides board members. So I'm in support of the recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. Board Member Hanson.
I'll probably run the danger of repeating a few things that have been said, but if the revolving loan account was set up to be self-insured, basically, then that seems to be the place that money should come from. I don't understand, however, why we don't have a recommendation from the charter school board on where the money should come from. It seems like they would be on top of the balancing of the funds and things that Member Davis talked about, Vice Chair Davis, and we would get some recommendation from them. But I'm happy right now to go ahead with the Finance Committee's recommendation. I don't understand why we are looking only to the bank account of the school for recovery of funds for this. And that's what I see in the backup, is we're just looking at their bank account funds and the balance of the loan. They've got other assets. They spent the money somewhere. I don't understand why we're not in a position like RC Willie would be, where we can go in and grab up all the computers and whatever else might be there and have that be secured by our loan. If that's not happening and not built into the way those loans are issued, that really needs to be looked at so that we do have some priority. I would think we'd be in first priority position on everything the money's spent on, so that we can recover, whatever's possible in this situation.
Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Yes, ma'am. Do I have my hand up still? I'm sorry.
Oh, you did. Sorry. So
yeah,
you don't.
I'll take it down.
Okay, so I actually appreciate all these questions, and I guess I really have some concerns, because are we setting precedents and saying we're going to take it here, but what if it happens this way? And is there any hurry in having this done today without some of this investigation? And I am so on Board Member Hanson's page. Where are their assets? Where did they spend this money, and why can't we have it back? Anybody have an answer to that?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Okay.
So, well, Stuart can answer it. We spent quite a bit of time in finance on this, as we're having fun in finance. And there's a procedure about gathering physical assets and disposal. And Madam Chair, if the question can go to Stuart to respond on that closing procedure.
That would be great. Stuart?
Yes, and just like Member Huntsman was saying, we did liquidate all the assets. You know, we did an inventory of everything that was purchased, and we ran some sales. So we tried to liquidate the assets to recover as much funds as possible. So all those processes were conducted to try and recover as much funds that we could.
Okay.
Madam Vice Chair, if I could, I understand Director Lambert is also with us if anybody would like to ask for further clarity.
Okay, I'm going to go to Board Member Hanson.
I'd just like to follow with Stuart if I could. So was there a physical building? I assume they were trying to open, they had a building that was built. And did they have any ownership interest in that building? Did we recover any funds from that asset?
No, they did not have a building. They were trying to lease a building. They actually did get into a lease of a building, but no, they didn't purchase a facility.
So none of the borrowed funds went for construction of a building?
Correct.
Okay.
Vice Chair Davis.
I'm just texting and hearing that there's a greater need in the revolving account for charters to access this money. So I'm feeling like we should move the money or move the money from the closure account to the revolving school account, unless Director Lambert tells us that the need is different.
Jennifer.
Hello, Jennifer Lambert, Executive Director for the State Charter School Board. I'm not sure I could say either way. I do know that we have funds in both accounts. I know that the amount of money in the revolving loan is very healthy right now, and it has been growing. For example, we recently had a new call or sent out applications to allow schools to apply for more money this year, and we actually did not get any applications in this last round. So I would say, if you were asking for my recommendation, I would say go forward with this motion based on prior precedents of how you've handled past situations, but to start conversations and looking forward in the future of if this ever happens again. Of course, we never hope that it does, but if it happens again, to consider that maybe we use the closure fund instead. So that would be my recommendation. Also, in terms of, I can answer about the State Charter School Board, about why they did not vote on this. There really is not an opportunity for the State Charter School Board to have any kind of say in what happens in these types of cases. Right now in statute or in board rule, there just isn't a point for the State Charter School Board to make any kind of recommendations on that. And so that's why it didn't come to them. However, what has come to them is we have that closure manual that the State Charter School Board approved. I believe it was also reviewed when you looked at our oversight policy, and staff followed those guidelines in that closure manual and how to proceed. Did that answer the questions? Is there anything more that I could clarify on this?
I'm not seeing any hands. When it says that we're going to write off the remaining balance owed by the Utah Mountain School, when it says we're going to write that off, does that mean it's coming out of the revolving loan, Deputy Superintendent Jones, or does that mean it's coming out from wherever? And I think we're setting precedents here. I think we need to be careful.
No, ma'am, it just basically absolves anyone from having to pay the remaining balance back into the revolving loan. It doesn't, we don't take money from anywhere else. We're just basically writing it off because we have what's called a debt instrument, and we can do that.
Okay. All right, do we have any other additional questions on this? Okay, so the committee motion is that the board direct USBE financial operations staff to follow the policies and procedures of state finance to effectively write off the remaining balance owed by Utah Mountain School. Seeing no more discussion, please vote. Okay, I'm going to do a quick roll call vote. Here we go. Board Member Booth.
Yes.
Board Member Cannon.
Yes.
Board Member Klein. Board
Yes,
Member-
sorry.
Thank you. Board Member Vice Chair Davis. Vice Chair Davis.
No.
Board Member Earl.
Yes.
Board Member Hanson.
Yes.
Board Member Hart.
Yes.
Board Member Chair Huntsman.
Yes.
Board Member Hutchings.
Yes.
Board Member Hymas.
Yes.
Board Member Lear. Board Member Lear.
Yes.
Yes. Board Member Moss.
Yes.
Board Member Norton.
Yes.
Board Member Straight.
No.
And I'm also a no. So there you have it. Okay. So Chair Moss, let's go.
All right, last item. We have a motion related to the reporting and assurances project that we've been working on for a while. The committee recommends, pursuant to Board Policy 1004, that the board establish a reports and requirements task force, parentheses R&R, for the purpose of integrating and monitoring the progress of legal requirements review, the streamlining and reduction of reports as required by HB 300 of the 2021 general session, and the use of USIMs to further these projects. Committee further recommends the board approve the R&R task force meet at least once every 2 months, and board leadership consider membership to include similar representation as the working group that produced the recommendations resulted in HB 300 of the 2021 general session. That's a mouthful.
Chair Moss, were those two separate motions?
I think those are combined in one. The intent of the establishment of the task force, paragraph 1, and their function in paragraph 2.
I'm just making sure that they weren't two separate motions in your meeting. Can someone clarify that for me?
That's a single motion, unless anybody correct me otherwise. It was a single motion.
Okay. All right. So the motion before the board is pursuant to Board Policy 4004 that the board establishes and establishes a reports and requirements R&R task force for the purpose of integrating and monitoring the progress of the legal requirements review and streamlining and reduction of reports as required in HB 300 of the 2021 general session, and the use of USIMs to further these projects. And that the board approves the R&R task force meet at least once every 2 months. Once every 2 months. And board leadership consider membership to include similar representation of the working group that produced the recommendations resulting in HB 300 of the 2021 general session. Discussion of that motion, Board Member Hanson.
Thanks. Just a question maybe for the chair. So HB 300 requires that we look at streamlining and reducing reports. Does it specifically require a task force, or do we feel that that's the best and most efficient way to accomplish the task? And if so, can you give me kind of the rationale?
Chair Moss.
Vice Chair, thank you. Correct. HB 300 requires that our staff work with the field, and there's already been some effort in that direction. We had a good discussion yesterday with Representative Pulsifer and some others that were part of that initial kind of informal group that weighed in on 300 and the companion bills. And our sense was that group had a pretty good cross-representation from the field of large and small districts, charter schools, BAs. Our own Sam Uri was then at Carl Mazer and weighed in. And so the sense was that this would be a good way of interpreting the feedback that came in from a survey that our staff recently conducted, helping to create an ongoing discussion group to spur this along, and also to coordinate these three elements that are sort of out there on different tracks. And so we've got the legal requirements review that starts with the sort of this process of where these requirements come from. You've got the reporting, which is either dictated in statute or perhaps added by us. And then you got USIMS, which is the logistics of how we collect this data. And so the sense was that this would be a good venue for coordinating that discussion, keeping it moving along, and then having regular reports so we can get our arms around all this and really take advantage of the opportunity that statute created.
Follow up, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I said go ahead.
Oh, sorry, didn't hear that.
No, I was on mute.
And I appreciate that explanation. I wondered about the timeline. Is there a way that we could work a timeline, at least for a first report or for some kind of a plan going forward into this? My experience with task force has been good and bad. Sometimes they get bogged down and can go on forever. If there's a clear end in sight, though, it's a good way to have a cross-functional, group talk about things and resolve issues quickly. But are we in a position where we can put some sort of a time restraint into this motion?
Vice Chair, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I would certainly consider that friendly. At one point, we talked about having the task force for 2 years. I don't think that made it in the final motion. I do think it would be helpful to have an interim kind of report date in which that group working with staff would report back on progress to date in accomplishing the goals that are outlined here. So I don't know I don't know if folks have specific ideas, but I think a 2-year task force with something interim would be a friendly amendment if somebody's got thoughts in that direction.
Board Member Hanson.
I just wondered if like a 6-month initial report or something like that would be feasible so we could at least see what direction we were headed. I know there's 3 different pieces that have to come together. We've got the attorney that's working on, going through all the code and figuring out what the requirements are. But would that be something that we could build in? And I certainly haven't been involved in the detailed discussion and don't want to presume that I, know better than what all you folks have been working on this in detail do. But if 6 months is feasible, I'd certainly be happy to see that in there.
So Chair Hanson, if I'm looking for clarity here, you're asking that there is a report given in 6 months added to this?
Yes.
Okay, so is that an amendment?
Before I made that amendment, I was wanting to hear from the committee or from Chair Moss. That was, 6 months was reasonable. I just want to get that initial report so that we can see the direction. And if 6 months is a good timing, I'll make that amendment.
I think you're better off quarterly, if I can just throw that in, if you want to take that as friendly advice. This needs to move pretty quickly, especially if there's some challenges we want to eliminate this legislative session. So a quarterly update, I think, will help create momentum in our legislative ask for this session, and then the following. Every 6 months might be too minimum of. I think the accountability piece would escalate if you're doing a quarterly update.
Chair Hanson put his thumb up.
I appreciate that. And I'll be happy to add to my amendment that the R&R task force provide quarterly reports to the board.
Amen here as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that is an amendment. I would need a second.
Second.
Second, Board Member Hart. Okay, Board Member Norton is waving her hand.
Can I make an amendment to the amendment?
Yes, if you're making amendment to the amendment, I kind of jumped over Vice Chair Davis, but I'll go to you
Okay.
and then we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's okay for amendment to the amendment, and I'll speak.
Okay.
I would just like to add to that amendment that it's a report of quantifiable objectives.
Did we have a second to that amendment already? Oh, that was Board Member Hart, yes. Board Member Hart or Board Member Hanson, do you have any rub with with just adding that to your amendment? I guess we need to make an amendment. Board Member Hanson?
Yeah, and I don't really have a problem with adding that. I assumed that would be part of it, but I think it would also be progress and quarterly reports. So I hesitate to start putting in requirements because where do we end? I would expect that the task force would come back and say, here's what we've done so far. Here's where we're headed. Here's what we hope to achieve. Here's the timeline. I mean, that's the sort of report that we'd expect from this kind of an organization. So if there's a way to capture all that, then I'm fine with adding to the amendment. I assumed that the report would be from a professional group like this, that it would contain all those elements.
Board Member Norton, thoughts on that?
I'm fine with that. I would like to see then, though, that where you added something like progress. So you can take quantifiable objectives out, but as long as you say progress reports.
Is that okay with you to say progress, Board Member Hanson?
Yeah, that's fine. Progress, you could even say progress reports and objectives if we're going to add to that, you know.
Okay, so now we're really starting all over here again. Board Member Norton, does that do your amendment how you would like?
Yeah, that's more than.
Okay, so I think to stay in proper protocol that we're probably going to need to say quarterly progress reports and objectives to be added as an amendment to the amendment. Reports and objectives to be added. Do I have a second to that?
I'll second if I can.
Yes, you can. Okay, anyone want to speak to that? Vice Chair Davis, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to vote on the amendment to the amendment because it seemed like it was a friendly amendment, unless I saw that wrong. But I would like to speak in favor of the amendment and also the motion. We didn't have necessarily FTE added into HB 300. And so I think this is an opportunity to get some eyes on the situation and help get some momentum moving forward with a variety of folks. So I'm in support of everything on the board.
Thank you. Board Member Lear?
I had a question that maybe I missed in the discussion. R&R again stands for what?
It's
not rest and relaxation.
I'm sorry?
It's not rest and relaxation.
Reports and requirements.
Okay, and I was hoping, tell me if this was discussed. I would like to know where the reports and requirements come from in this ongoing discussion. Is that something that are they coming from the board? Are they coming from the legislature? Because I think we found in previous reviews that many of these requirements and reports come from the legislature themselves. So I would like to have that be an ongoing piece of information. Is that assumed, or do we need to also add that in?
Chair Moss?
That is most definitely the intent. In fact, we already have a preliminary review of assurances. Well, it's not preliminary, it's been revised with Chair Hanson's committee. Some of that goes to federal, some of it goes to state law, and some of it goes to us. So the idea would be that this is a comprehensive look at requirements, federal, state legislature, us, what reports come out of those requirements, how is that data gathered currently, and is USIMS going to affect how it's gathered? So we're hoping for a comprehensive view of all that so that we can then have a better idea of how to target efficiency and redundancy and streamline and take that burden off in a way that preserves accountability.
Right. So as not to complicate this discussion, I will assume that information will be forthcoming. I just don't want to be the bad guy when we have learned many times that the board is not responsible for many of these reports. Thanks.
We could put in, Chair, if I might.
Go ahead.
We perhaps could further amend to say monitoring the progress of the review of federal, state legislative, and state board requirements to make it. You think
that doesn't get to my point because that means they're being monitored, but it doesn't identify where each report comes from. I'll just, as this goes forward, I can ask this question again, and it'll simplify the discussion today.
Thank you, Board Member Lear. Vice Chair Davis, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. Chair Moss?
One additional question. I just want to comment that our staff have been working on this, and we identified both some internal and external challenges in our discussion the other day. So we want to provide support in moving this forward. I think this is a group, as somebody pointed out, this is free labor, folks that are very interested in moving this discussion. And so I think it's a good opportunity to back up what our staff have already been working on.
Thank you. Okay, so the amendment is to, I need the amendment, please. So the amendment is to add reports and objectives to the previous amendment. Please vote if you would like to keep reports and add reports and objectives.
Progress, to be accurate, it's progress reports, Laura, right?
I think it said progress.
It does. So we add that. That's part of the add.
Quarterly. Oh, okay. I thought it was already in the amendment.
It
Sorry.
is. It is. You didn't say that. So.
No, I'm just doing the parts that were added after by Board Member Norton.
Okay. That's fine. I'm voting for it anyway.
Okay. I don't see any no's. So now that has been added to the amendment. The amendment is to add to the original motion, and that the R&R task force provide quarterly progress reports and objectives to the board. Please vote. I think that's unanimous as well.
Yes.
So now I'm going to need the whole thing back. Thank you. Okay. So now the motion before the board is pursuant to board policy 1004. Wait just a minute. I don't think we have to say that in there. Okay. The motion is that the board establishes a reports and requirements R&R task force for the purpose of integrating and monitoring the progress of the legal requirements review, the streamlining and reduction of reports as required by HB 300 of the 2021 general session, and the use of USIMs to further these projects, and that the board approves the R&R task force meet at least once every 2 months, and board leadership consider membership to include similar representation as the working group that produced the recommendations resulting in HB 300. I don't know why we keep saying that, of the 2021 general session, and that the R&R task force provide quarterly progress reports and objectives to the board. Seeing no discussion, please vote. I see that as unanimous. Thank you. Okay, Chair Moss, are you done?
We are. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I hear this singing hallelujah coming into my head. Just kidding you.
Keeping the fun in finance.
Keeping the fun in finance. Okay,